This morning, I want to talk about past and future and share a quote with you that I read recently that resonated with me, and I wanted to share some thoughts about it. And the quote was, and I can't tell you who to attribute it to, maybe many folks, but it goes, quote, "No amount of regret can change what happened in the past, and no amount of anxiety will change what will happen in the future." No amount of regret can change what happened in the past. No amount of anxiety will change what happened in the future. We human beings spend so much time focused on the past and future. In fact, I ran across a study when I was putting my talk together that said we probably spend 1/3 to one half of our time thinking about either the past or the future. You know, in life, with its intricate dance of moments, constantly invites us to reflect on the past and anticipate the future. Now, before I get into the topic for today, just a couple of caveats. One, understand that our goal is not to always be in the present moment, which, even if we could, would be dysfunctional because we need to think about the future. We need to make plans. We need to anticipate our needs. We need to inform our decisions going forward. So it's not functional to be always in the present moment. You know, and in addition, we reflect on the past, looking back to savor good memories, to learn from our past actions. So again, it's never about, in our practice, being 100% in the present moment, even if we were able to achieve that. We couldn't function that way. But what I'm talking about this morning is specifically regrets about the past and anxiety about the future, both of which cause most suffering. So I'm talking about specifically regrets and specifically anxiety about and worry about the future. And as this quote I read suggests, both regret and anxiety are futile exercises in the grand scheme of existence. Regret binds us to the past in a suffering, dysfunctional way, and anxiety shackles us to an imagined future. And neither action holds the transformative power that we wish they would, that we ascribe to them. Instead, they obscure the present moment, the only reality where true change and peace can occur. So I want to explore the truth of this perspective from the Buddhist teachings and see how these words in the quote resonate with the teachings of the Dharma. Regret arises when we cling to the past, when we lament our mistakes, when we go over and over our missed opportunities or our painful experiences. And from the Buddhist perspective, this clinging is a manifestation of dukkha, of suffering, the inherent unsatisfactoriness of life. We may wish to undo past actions or relive a happier time, but the reality is that the past is unchangeable, as you know. The Buddha taught that clinging to what has already passed, all the regrets that we may have about what's already passed, only perpetuates suffering. In the Dhammapada, which is a small summary of Buddhist sayings, he says, quote, "Do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind in the present moment." And again, there he's not talking about never reflecting and savoring or never planning. He's talking about regret and anxiety. Regret is rooted in attachment, the desire for things to have been different. Yet if we reflect deeply, we see that it's nothing but a memory, a collection of thoughts and feelings that arise in the present moment. It's a series of stories about our past actions. And by clinging to these memories, these painful, regretful memories, we just add layerings of suffering to a wound that has either healed or is in the process of healing. It's like ripping off the scab. So there is certainly wisdom in acknowledging our mistakes, learning from them, which is about the only useful thing about regret. I don't want to do it again. But to dwell on them in a way that causes us to suffer is to really ignore the impermanence of life. The Buddha reminded us that all things are transient like a flowing river. What has passed cannot be retrieved. But what we do now can shape the river's course. Remember, he said we never step in the same river twice. It's always flowing. It's always reflecting impermanence. So that's regret. If regret ties us to the past, anxiety pulls us into the future in a way that causes suffering. It is the mind's restless attempt to control what has not yet come to pass. We imagine scenarios. We anticipate outcomes. We fixate on fears that never materialize or may never materialize. As West often reminds us, Mark Twain once said, quote, "I've had lots of worries in my life, most of which never happened," end quote. I love that quote. In Buddhism, this is a form of aversion or avoidance, a resistance to uncertainty, a resistance to impermanence, a resistance to not knowing what's going to happen. Anxiety arises when we forget the truth that the future, like the past, is not real in the moment. It's not here yet. It exists only as a projection of our minds. Again, the Buddha taught that worry and fear about the future stem from what he calls ignorance or delusion, one of the three poisons that perpetuate suffering. Delusion or ignorance blinds us to the present moment and the truth of impermanence. All things, including and especially the future, are uncertain, and we hate uncertainty, as we often talk about. We'll do anything to try to control it or create the illusion of controlling it. But when we spend our energy trying to control the uncontrollable or the unavoidable, as we talked about recently, is to fight against the natural flow of life. Now, this in no way means we don't plan, or we're careless, or we fail to anticipate what might happen. Of course we do that. That's prudent. But it doesn't help to create all these dreadful scenarios. Rather, we approach the future with mindfulness and equanimity, as free as we can from the what ifs, from the chains of anxiety that we often generate. Both anxiety and regret, anxiety about the future, regret about the past, distract us from the moment, which is the only place where life is truly unfolding. The Buddha emphasized the importance of mindfulness, the Pali word is sati, as a key to liberation, because it allows us in the moment to observe our thoughts and emotions without becoming entangled in them. So we can observe them, we can see them for what they are, but we don't get all caught up in them. It teaches us to see regret and anxiety for what they are, simply mental constructs that have no inherent power over us. Again, in other words, simply stories that we tell ourselves. So with mindfulness, we learn to let go of past regrets, and we drop the rope on worrying about future anxieties. I've used this metaphor before, but I really love it. We see that clinging to regret or anxiety is like holding a burning coal. It only causes us pain. The Buddha's four teachings on the Four Noble Truths remind us that suffering arises from attachment, whether attachment to past regrets or attachments to future worries or future scenarios. And the way to end the suffering is to drop the rope, let go of the attachment. And this letting go happens in the moment through conscious awareness, acknowledgement of impermanence, and compassionate acceptance of what is now. By living fully in the present, we make choices that align with wisdom and compassion. And this past informs our understanding, but it doesn't define us. It's how we grow and learn. The future invites our preparation, our wise preparation, but we don't let it control us and generate tremendous anxiety. The present is where we find freedom, peace, and the ability to make skillful choices. So, a reminder of some of the practices that help us with this challenge. To release regret about the past and anxiety about the future, we practice certain techniques that the Buddha offered us. Mindful breathing. We can always come back to the breath. Focusing on the breath anchors us in the present moment. As Thich Nhat Hanh taught us, quote, Breathing in, I calm my body. Breathing out, I smile. Dwelling in the present moment, I know this is a wonderful moment, close quotes. We meditate. Regular meditation cultivates awareness and equanimity. We observe our thoughts without judgment, recognizing their impermanence. We also practice loving kindness, where we direct compassion toward ourselves and others to help dissolve the weight of regret and fear about the future. And then, as I've already mentioned, acceptance of impermanence, reflecting on the transient nature of all things helps reduce our attachment to the past and the future. If we acknowledge the transient nature of everything, we don't get so tightly clinging to our regrets or future worries. It helps us accepting impermanence, which is so essential to our practice, helps us embrace life as it is rather than as we wish it to be. And then last but not least is skillful action. Instead of becoming paralyzed by regret or anxiety, we focus on taking wise and compassionate actions in the present. This is where our planning comes in. It involves skillful action, skillful choices. And all of these methods empower us to shape the future without being consumed by fear. The wisdom of this statement, that regret cannot change the past and anxiety cannot change the future, reminds us of the profound importance of trying to live in the present moment. Because regret is a chain that binds us to what we can no longer be, and anxiety is a shadow cast by what may never come. Both are illusions that distract us from the truth of the here and now. And as the Buddha said, be where you are, otherwise you will miss your life. So that is some thoughts on past and future.